What is going on? Welcome to the pod. Today we are talking about CrossFit because I decided to join a CrossFit box, as they call it, for the first time. Now, I had done one single CrossFit class like 7, maybe 8 years ago, something like that. But point being, I joined essentially as a complete newbie. As you know, I've been working out for quite a while. I started lifting weights when I was 14 or 15, and at that time I was training for football and basketball, as well as to look better, of course. When I stopped playing football and basketball competitively, I worked out primarily to feel healthy and look good naked. Over the last decade, I've gone through periods of loving the gym, not loving the gym, just going through the motions, more or less, but regardless, I have stayed consistent because general fitness and health is a huge priority for me. So even when I haven't loved working out, I've done it regardless of how I felt. And after a decade plus, the whole training mostly for aesthetics or how I look was just getting kind of old. And I'm always looking for different ways to challenge myself and essentially mix it up. Hence, CrossFit. I thought, why not? Relatively speaking, CrossFit is really new, and it got a bit of a bad name or rap in the fitness community because you'd see folks injuring themselves left, right, and center on social media. People are getting crushed by barbells and all sorts of stuff. Now, you might even have experience or know some folks that have gotten injured doing CrossFit, but fortunately, it has advanced a lot over the last while, especially in terms of better onboarding, programming, scaling, and therefore injury management. So what we're going to cover in this episode is my experience over the last 30 days, the advantages and disadvantages of CrossFit as I see it, and therefore, based on that, whether you'd like to give it a go or not. If you do, what sort of results that you can expect. I'm also going to touch on whether I'm going to continue doing it, as well as just some general things that I've noticed over the last month in terms of the community as a whole. So CrossFit is defined as a fitness regimen that involves constantly varied functional movements performed at high intensity. And CrossFit's bread and butter, or thing, I would say, are something called Metcons, which stands for metabolic conditioning, which is basically just a fancy way of saying high intensity exercise. Some of these classic or benchmark workouts, or WODs as they call them, which stands for workout of the day, are named just like people. For example, Cindy, as it's named, is 5 pull-ups, 10 push-ups, and 15 body weight squats. And you do as many rounds of that as possible in 20 minutes. Another classic is Helen, which is a 400-meter run, 21 kettlebell swings, and 12 pull-ups. And you do 3 rounds of that as fast as you can. So Cindy has a time cap on it in the sense that you do as many rounds as you can in 20 minutes, while Helen is 3 rounds that you get done as fast as possible. So there's also some strategy that goes into approaching CrossFit workouts, which is super cool in my opinion. I find that stuff really fun because it's almost like a skill in itself in terms of identifying your strengths and weaknesses and adjusting accordingly. One more benchmark is Diane, which is 21 deadlifts, 21 handstand push-ups, 15 deadlifts, 15 handstand push-ups, 9 deadlifts, and 9 handstand push-ups. And you do that as fast as you can. So as you can see, there is a ton of variance here, not only in terms of how the workouts are structured, but also what movements you are doing. In CrossFit, there are staple lifts like squats and deadlifts, and there are also things like kettlebells, running, rowing, gymnastics, all sorts of different exercises. And the nice thing is that there are always scaled versions of each movement. Meaning, if you're not at the point where you can do a handstand push-up, let's say, which most people can't, even consistent CrossFitters themselves, there are a bunch of less challenging versions to implement first in order to accommodate your current strength, skill, and fitness level. Point being, anyone can do CrossFit. You don't have to be a top tier athlete, an Olympic level gymnast, or outrageously fit. That is not necessary. And this leads us into the first pro or the advantage of this fitness modality, which is that anyone can do it. Now, I will say that CrossFit can be intimidating for folks, especially if you haven't been an athlete in the past or you are new to lifting weights, because doing something like a barbell squat is a lot more technical than sitting on a leg extension or leg press machine in a traditional gym. But having said that, the gym in general can be quite intimidating for pretty much everyone that hasn't been before. That's sort of baked into the cake regardless. Truth be told, I had a few butterflies going into the CrossFit gym for the first time, and I literally do this fitness stuff for a living. So don't let that stop you, because it's only temporary, and once you get over that initial hump of your first session, you'll be good to go. Another pro is that CrossFit focuses on the fundamentals, meaning it ain't super fancy. If you've ever seen a CrossFit gym, it basically consists of weights, squat racks, some gymnastic-like equipment, a few cardio pieces, and a whole bunch of open space. There aren't any traditional machines, and so it forces folks to focus on the foundations, which is awesome because the foundations, i.e. push-ups, pull-ups, squats, deadlifts, etc., are the meat and potatoes of resistance training. And then, of course, there is conditioning work within the methodology. You hear me talking about the foundations of fat loss all the time, which are nutrition, first and foremost, followed by sleep, movement via step counts, and stress management. Those are the 4 pillars. And in regards to resistance training, push-ups, pull-ups, squats, deadlifts, etc., are the equivalent pillars or base of the pyramid, meaning they give you the most bang for your buck in regards to results. Now, I'd say that the biggest pro or thing that CrossFit has going for it is the community aspect. It ticks a lot of evolutionary boxes because it provides social connection, fitness, accountability, and a sense of progression all at the same time. It fills a bunch of buckets in a matter of like an hour. Some people do cultivate community at regular gyms, but CrossFit gyms definitely have a tighter knit community aspect. I see that as a huge plus. However, some folks like to go to the gym, put their headphones in, keep their head down, and just do their own thing. That's totally cool, but if that's you, CrossFit probably isn't going to be your vibe. The gym that I joined has a Facebook group. They scheduled a laser tag thing this month. They send out community emails. It is social connection rich. And one of the best things about that is that it pulls you to show up. Like if a bunch of your friends or just people that you like and have things in common with are at the gym, you are far more likely to go to the gym. There's actually a joke in the fitness and health space that goes something like, how do you know when a vegan or a CrossFitter walks into a bar? And the answer is, because they'll tell you right away. Folks that are into CrossFit are typically pretty into CrossFit, which is great. It's just one of those things where you sort of get bit by the bug because, again, it ticks so many boxes as far as what humans thrive off of from an evolutionary standpoint. If you're someone who likes classes and being told what to do for your workout, CrossFit is a fit because all the programming is done for you. And so all you need to do is show up ready and willing to put in the work. Also, there is a cool little competitive element that benefits folks that are more inclined that way. By no means do you have to be competitive, but there is that option. Another advantage is variation. There's essentially endless variation to these WODs or workouts of the day because there are just so many elements to play with via movements, time domains, the order of exercises, the amount of reps, technique, and skill development. If you are prone to getting bored with your exercise sessions, this could be a great solution. The one caveat would be that programming is super important, which does vary gym to gym. And so if you fall into this I get bored easily category, you might want to look into the programming aspect before joining any specific spot. Something else that's really cool is how CrossFit can indirectly have folks shift their relationship with food. And the reason is because it's very much performance oriented. And so food amount and food quality is really important because nutrition impacts performance like crazy. For example, if you heavily overeat, undereat, or just crush a bunch of food that has you feel like shit, that is going to impact your gym performance. And if your gym performance is important to you in any way, shape, or form, this can be a cool way for folks to indirectly eat better. This also, of course, applies to things like sleep and alcohol intake. If you want to perform better than you did last time, you've got to take care of yourself. And so this is an added benefit if gym performance and progression are things that you care about. Now let's get into a few potential cons or drawbacks. Unless you have been exposed to the main movements like squats, deadlifts, pull-ups, cleans, etc., you will require some one-on-one coaching prior to jumping in to the regular classes that CrossFit gyms provide. Most gyms actually require folks to do something like 4 to 6 sessions of one-on-one coaching to make sure that they're moving properly before they can join a regular class. And this is a drawback only in the sense that it requires an investment of you, both monetarily and time-wise. Personally, I like this a lot because circling back to the injury dealio, it's really important that when folks are performing these more complex lifts, that their form is on point. There's really only so much room for error on something like a lat pull down or a hamstring curl machine. But when we're talking about tossing a barbell over your head, you want to know what you're doing. I would actually say that if a specific CrossFit gym lets you just jump into a full-on membership without any prior experience or movement coaching, don't go to that gym because it should be a requirement in my opinion, which at most boxes nowadays it is. Another drawback is that CrossFit is more expensive than a typical gym membership, significantly more expensive in fact. If you're looking to invest, say, $50 in a monthly membership, CrossFit ain't for you because it is like 3 to 5 times that depending on the gym itself. Having said that, you are getting actual coaching, which isn't included in a typical gym membership. And so that's worth taking into account just because it's not exactly apples to apples. Another con that somewhat goes contrary to what I mentioned about basics and foundations is that most CrossFit gyms don't have any machines. And personally, I think that having a few cables and machines can be an awesome little supplement to do a few exercises that you just cannot do with regular barbells and weights. More and more CrossFit gyms seem to be implementing some accessories like cables, but most of them aren't quite there yet. Now, one concern that tends to pop up more so for women in terms of lifting weights is that they don't want to get too bulky. And this is especially relevant in terms of CrossFit because when you look at some of the pro female CrossFit athletes, they are absolutely jacked. A lot more jacked, relatively speaking, than the men are. There are a few factors at play here. One is that women specifically seem to respond to a lot of training volume quite well. They have less absolute strength, of course, but they can just go and go and go for a long time. Also, this is the more relevant factor, and it is PED use, or performance enhancing drugs. CrossFit, just like any other sport that involves money via winning events, sponsorships, etc., has drug use in it. And that applies to both the men and the women. I've noticed that the CrossFit community at large tends not to want to believe that their favorite athletes are using PEDs because they put them up on some sort of moral pedestal, but they are. I've been thinking about putting a podcast together on the PED topic in relation to sport as well as in Hollywood because it tends to set unrealistic expectations for folks that aren't using PEDs. So let me know if you'd like me to cover that topic, by the way. But point being, both men and women are using PEDs in CrossFit. And so being that you're almost surely not, there's no need to worry about getting too big or too bulky. And let's say that for some reason you start CrossFit or just lifting heavier weights and you begin to put on more muscle than you like. You can just back off a little bit. And muscle gain is a very slow process. And so it's not like you're going to wake up one day and be like, oh my God, I'm huge. It's super gradual. So you can reel things in anytime. You probably won't need to, but you can. Personally, I didn't see any women at my gym that I would classify as too big or too bulky, and I know that that's a relative term, but I actually am not a huge fan of a super lean or super muscular woman from a dating perspective. Oftentimes women assume that because I'm in the fitness industry that I want to be with someone that is uber fit, and that's not actually the case at all. Being with someone that takes great care of themselves and is really healthy is super important to me, but she doesn't need to have abs or anything like that. I actually far prefer a more feminine, curvy body personally, and I'm mentioning that just because I am single at the moment. No, I'm kidding. I mention it because you might be thinking, well, you didn't think anyone was too big or too bulky, but you're a fitness guy. And so you obviously like nothing but the stereotypical fit chick. Not the case. A few more things that I noticed. The average person that goes to a CrossFit gym is way stronger than the average gym goer by a mile. And the reason for this is that they focus on the foundational lifts. If you're a dude and you want to look jacked, focus on the big lifts. And if you're a woman and you want a bigger butt, focus on the big lifts. The average CrossFitter also has far better form than the average gym goer, and a lot of this is simply due to coaching because they actually have it, versus most folks in regular gyms are just completely winging it. In terms of body fat percentages, I would say that CrossFitters are fairly comparable to most gym goers. Maybe on average they're a little bit leaner, but it's close. And the reason for this is because nutrition is the key in terms of losing fat. Meaning, if fat loss is your goal and you start doing CrossFit and don't change your diet, you are not going to get leaner. It is not a magic bullet for fat loss. Something that I find really interesting about CrossFit gyms specifically is that there are no mirrors, which says a lot. This ties in with the performance focus over the aesthetics focus. And by the way, there is nothing wrong with wanting to look better. I am all for it. I think that if someone legitimately doesn't give a shit about how they look, they're either lying or there's typically a self-worth and or self-esteem issue at play. Also, 99.9% of CrossFitters still care about how they look. And so they may not be looking in the mirror at the gym, but just like everyone else, they're checking themselves out elsewhere. Speaking of looks, I love the fact that you can train in CrossFit gyms without your shirt. I don't know of any commercial gyms in North America, at least, that you can go tarps off in. And I love that, especially when it's hot. It's just such an awesome feeling training in just shorts, or if you're a gal, shorts and a sports bra. Another thing that I've really enjoyed is learning new skills that are involved in CrossFit. For example, I learned how to do an exercise called toes to bar the other day, and it just felt so good to not know and then know. And I'm working on getting better and better at that movement. And so this has been a really fun way to feel like I'm making progress. It's also an awesome feeling from an athletic standpoint. I've been an athlete my whole life, but when I stopped playing football and basketball competitively, I haven't quite felt like as much of an athlete. And CrossFit has provided that for me over the last month, which has been super cool. There's a feeling of being more physically capable in my day-to-day life, which is never a bad thing. It's empowering stuff. So am I going to continue with this whole CrossFit thing? 100%. I am loving it right now. And it's really invigorated my relationship with fitness as a whole. It's reminding me of when I started cycling, and I legit got bit by the cycling bug. I was obsessed with it right up until I started traveling year-round about 4.5 years ago. I am feeling the same way about CrossFit, which is super exciting because there is access in just about every city now versus I'm not going to lug my bike around with me. Also, it's just a great fitness modality to be well-rounded because while CrossFitters don't have the most absolute top-end strength, they're still pretty damn strong. They are not marathon runners in terms of cardiovascular fitness, but they can hang on the cardio front too. And they are not Olympic level gymnasts, but they can do some gymnastics. And so it's an awesome way to become a lot more well-rounded from a fitness perspective. I think it's great, and if it's something that interests you, go for it. It might be a little bit scary at first to take that plunge, but that applies to most things that you get into for the first time. Like I mentioned, I had a few butterflies before I went in for the first time, and fitness is my thing. And so don't let that hold you back because there could be so many benefits for you on the other side of that initial discomfort. And this isn't exclusive to CrossFit. Maybe that other side is dialing in your nutrition or prioritizing other aspects of your lifestyle. Take the leap. Now is the time, because if not now, when? Like really, when? If you're interested in applying for one-on-one nutritional coaching and or workout design with me, you can click the link in the description below or head on over to n1fitness.com/coaching. On Instagram, I'm at N1Fitness. On TikTok, I'm at the N1Fitness, and YouTube, I'm at Marcus Sadu. Feel free to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform if you'd like to. Be sure to hit the subscribe button. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope that you found this episode useful, and I will catch you on the next one. See ya.